Alright guys, Kane from Garage 11 and we're here today for another episode of Behind the Build. And we've been really fortunate to get out of our own workshop and away from our own bikes and come down to On Point with Stells to have a chat to him about this amazing 2011 KDX200 two-stroke AF conversion. Stunning bike. We're going to deep dive into this one and go through some of the nitty-gritty and what goes into doing some of these AF conversions and so a build of this caliber, because it's not an easy thing. You're not just restoring what's already there, you're having to create, you're having to think about problems, you're having to make things fit that weren't meant to be there. So stick around, we're going to get into it and it should be a really exciting thing, and hopefully we can get you a bit better insight into what goes into doing an AF conversion like this. KDX200, am I correct? 11 KDX200. Yeah. This is a pretty unique thing. Like we see a lot of guys doing CR500 AFs, a lot of that sort of stuff, but this is pretty cool. That's why I reached out to you, because I really wanted to have a look at this, because it's Cowie, it's not as easy as what some of the newest CR500 conversions are. Yeah. So take us through it. We'll start from the front like we usually do. So obviously, On Point, suspension's your thing, so this thing should handle pretty good, I'd imagine.
Yeah. So it's still just production suspension. Yep. They're like a 47 millimeter single-sided function fork. Okay. So they've already got a spring, like coil spring in it. So, and they've got factory DLC lowers, which
that was a little trick.
It does look good, man, and that's why the white fork guards, because it just makes the black pop a bit more. Yeah. But basically, we just re-valved it and sprung it to suit Matt's weight, and obviously for trail riding, not motocross.
Yeah, different thing altogether.
Yeah, just sort of like, made it a bit more like trail friendly. So
the separate function forks, I was going to try and say the acronym, I'm not going to try that.
Yeah, I always stuff it up too. So.
The separate function forks, they were a love or hate thing with a lot of guys, weren't they? They sort of had that, they lived in that grey area for a while.
They did, and they're kind of like us, you nearly put them on the same page as like a WP AER fork if you put a coil spring conversion in it. They're good fork, you can make them work really well, but it's the same thing, like, you've got one fork basically doing all your damping work and one doing all your spring work, force work, so it's sort of sometimes hard to find a good balance for those things.
A lot of guys did find, like say that as well, the balance is sort of the big thing with it.
Yeah, for sure.
Trying to get that. Was there anything you had to do up the front, obviously, with the conversion? I mean, it's not really affected at all, but... Not
really, man. It's, like pretty much other than obviously the lower half of the bike, the top half all sort of remain the same. Some stock triple clamp offset, all that sort of stuff. Okay. But yeah, like I said, just basically with the front end, just revalved the fork and sprung it to suit obviously the two-stroke inertia and the rider's weight.
Because that's a big thing as well, and a lot of guys don't really think about that. It's a different characteristic, because you're not just putting it's not the same. Like, it's not same.
Not at all.
It's same different. Like, you put a two-stroke in a four-stroke frame. We've had this conversation myself with other colleagues and stuff like that. The frames are far more rigid. The suspension's different.
For sure.
Your pitch, engine braking coming in's a lot different. All that sort of stuff. So it's not just a matter of putting a two-stroke engine in one of these frames. Like you're saying, like forks, you've got to set them up and you've got to make it work.
Yeah, for sure. And I've sort of been hoping to get a same bike as with the stock motor come in, so we can actually weigh and measure the different weight bias. To see like what the percentage difference is, without obviously the inertia side of things, but just see like where the different weight is in the difference between the four-stroke and two-stroke.
It would be quite different. Like it would be a huge difference.
I would be confident to say that it could be like a 10 to 15% variance between the two bikes.
Yeah, that wouldn't surprise me as well. And you've got a lower centre of gravity as well. I would think. Or that also comes into it. So this thing is going to be set up for rec reg, I'm gathering, hence the front light. Or is that, So it's a trail-based, like a trail-orientated enduro type thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was sort of like one, unfortunately, there's not a really nice headlight that Cowie sort of make, and we kind of wanted to keep the theme of the KDX, and obviously KDX in a production bike come out with a headlight.
Yep.
So we sort of
you're not going to put an old KDX headlight on the front.
No, exactly. So we've found this, these new Polysport headlights. They kind of look pretty cool.
They have a bit of a moto feel about them because they're quite flush. They don't have that massive protrusion.
Yeah, and that's like the bike's kind of got like a moto. I'd nearly call it like a cross-country bike in some sense. Like it's got obviously, it's a motocross frame.
Yeah.
But we wanted to keep that tradition of having a headlight, so it kind of worked well.
That's kind of the cool thing about it, because when I first saw it, I was like, oh, look, it's a KX engine in a KXF, like that traditional sort of thought. But when you see the graphics at KDX and you start obviously talking to yourself a little bit more about it, it definitely has it is cool because it has moto elements, but it also has, like, it's a really nice blend of the two.
Yeah, and that's, like obviously Matt, the owner, when he sort of pitched the idea to me, and he had a KDX laying around, and I had the rolling chassis with a blown up motor, and he's sort of come up with the idea, to his credit. And that was when he bought the rolling chassis off me for, it'd be like 7, 8 years ago now.
So probably when it was still
current and I was like,
bike.
We'll see. These like dead end projects that would never happen. And then, to his credit, he obviously stripped the KDX down and did all his own fab work. And
that's pretty wild, because I mean, what was, so outside of the sort of the front end side of things, obviously, I mean, we'll touch on wheels, your A60s there, nice hubs, so billet hubs, all that sort of stuff. The styling tricks in well with the blue, the green, like that Kawasaki sort of feeling with it. It does work well. Yeah,
for sure. And that obviously retro sort of that era of graphics. Obviously, Cowie always had like a lot of blue in it. So we obviously try to keep a lot of the blue features.
Cowie always had really good graphics too. Like just looking at these, that's a good looking graphic. Like they always made good looking motorcycles.
Even God knows how many years later, like it still looks pretty rad. So.
Oh, it does. And like you sort of tie in, with your blues and stuff in your wheels, and like you said, the blues here, it's not too overpowering, but it just highlights what's happening here.
And I didn't want to, I was really trying to, because I was trying to be courteous of not putting too much bling on it.
You can overdo it so quickly.
Yeah, because, it sort of can go from being like cool to then really cheap and tacky.
Yes.
So that's why like the brake master cylinder caps and a lot of that stuff, we sort of just kept it just like a nice neutral Cerakoted colour, and then just added a couple of blue things like from the front to the rear of the bike, and then luckily this year of KX200F had the little blue
and looking at here,
it's
like it's just that little stuff that helps tie it together, which is really cool. Radiators, was there much, like we're going to start, as we move back with this bike, we're just going to get more and more into the fabrication zone, and then it's going to come back out of it again. So obviously radiators, like, it's not just a matter of getting a couple of engine mounts lined up and then hoping for the best. Like there's a whole, I've always taught, you modify one thing, you got to modify 10 other things to make that one thing work. So radiators, was the cooling system pretty straightforward, or was there a bit of modding with that?
Again, I was pretty lucky that Matt, the owner, he'd done a lot of his own fab work.
Because he's a fabricator.
He's a fabricator by trade, and pretty switched on when it comes to sort of all that stuff. So he like chop and shut like a lot of the outlets and inlets for the radiator, and sort of made it all work. And lucky enough that all I had to do and reassemble the bike was sort of just like put all the hoses on and just make sure like nothing was going to rub.
Clearances and things like that.
Because obviously it is like an older bike, so it will vibrate a little bit more than normal. So we were sort of pretty courteous of making sure like nothing was going to rub through a radiator hose. But surprisingly, it made them work really, really well. And like, we didn't really have to go too crazy with like custom hoses or anything like that. So
because that can be a thing that catches a lot of guys out, and that's sort of the difference between a good conversion and stuff that you see some conversion. We've all seen them. It's like, wow, that's
another thing as well, like that Matt sort of worked out himself, was the KXF and the KDX flow coolant in a different direction.
Oh, right. Wow.
Yeah, so I think that goes from maybe the out of the head, back through the radiators, and back into the water pump.
Yep.
Where the KXF goes.
Pushes the other way.
Other way, yeah.
Yeah,
so,
right.
I think that's something like that. I haven't actually.
But that's little things that a lot of people wouldn't think about.
No,
Do you know what
yeah.
I mean? Like,
So
not at all.
Yeah, you got to sort of like think about how it's all going to work.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's done pretty well there. So yeah, it made my life a lot easier when
Oh, dude,
we went
and
to assemble
any
it.
of that sort of like, I can make a mess with aluminium and it sticks together if I need it to, but like welding aluminium and making it look good and work, especially thin gauge stuff, that's a nightmare. That can really, that takes an artist to do that sort of stuff well.
Yeah, I always appreciate someone who can weld anything well.
So I mean, looking at the engine side of things, the tank, but these weren't fuel injected then, were they?
They were.
Were they?
Yeah,
So
so this is the first fuel injected KXF 250F.
Okay.
So what he's done is they've just made a adapter plate for where the fuel pump would normally bolt up to the
like
tank.
a block off plate with
just like a
outlet
big
on it.
block off plate that they've milled up or machined up or whatever they've done, and then they've just tapped a fuel tap into it.
Yeah, perfect.
Which is the standard KDX fuel tap.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's got like on and reserve and off. Because that's sort of one of the easier aspects to get around with a lot of these conversions, because you are getting bikes that are fuel injected now. I mean, to me that still sounds weird, but fuel injected bikes. But you know, like having that side of it's definitely another thing to sort of think about. Engine stuff. Now, did you take care, or you involved with engine side of things? So I done basically full ground up rebuild of the engine. It was a running unit. Like the actual bike was, the original KDX was in reasonable condition. And so basically pretty much full strip down, had everything hydroblasted, rebuilt crank, replated cylinder, like new piston rings. But I'd custom billet power valves, because these things always were
eating
really
power
bad.
valves, like YZs, just eating them.
They just snap power valves all the time. So they've Matt sourced some of them from overseas.
Okay.
And
there's actually quite a few guys we found a lot with like the YZs and stuff, like early or mid 80s YZ power valves. There's actually guys, which is great, remaking this stuff, because that's the biggest thing with a lot of these older units is. Cool, it's romantic to restore a bike, but when you start looking at some of those 1% things, you're like, oh my God, where am I going to find this?
And that's unfortunately why we've sort of slowed down a lot with the resto stuff and doing these awesome bike builds, because
it's
obviously with what we've got going on with our race programs and all that. That's why we leave it up to you guys now.
We're the only ones stupid enough to sort of take it on.
Probably the only ones we trust with the work too.
Perfect. Clearance issues like the exhaust, that's one thing that's always baffled me with AF conversions is exhaust. We haven't done a great deal of them. We haven't been a part of a lot of them. Our customers live in that more traditionalist sense when it comes to steel frame 500s and whatever else. But one thing I've always admired is how guys can get a pro circuit exhaust and stick it on a 2011 KXF. Like, was there much fabrication required or modification required to get it to work?
Yeah, that's probably where it starts getting a little bit more.
It all goes downhill from there.
Yeah, that's where Matt and his mate I think had done a lot of all this before. They basically assembled the bike.
Built it twice essentially.
Disassembled and brought it to me in boxes. But from what I know, they lifted this wishbone up. I think it might have been 25 mil. I could be wrong.
Clear the port.
So they just cut it, lifted it, welded it, made new rails. And then with the exhaust, basically all he's had to do is do one section and cut a section there and a section there, and just sort of like twist it up a bit. And it was
really pretty much ready to go.
And then a couple of custom mounts. Or actually had like a mount that was originally for either the coil or the regulator off the KX250F. And it lined perfect up with that mount.
The coil's just up under there as well.
And then they've just drilled and put an insert in the lower one.
It's crazy. Like, I mean, I guess when you think about it though, like even though they are very different motorcycles, the basic framework is still similar.
The concept is the same.
You're not dealing with something completely different.
No. So kind of like worked out pretty well in their favour, and they
Yeah.
didn't really have to do too much fab work,
And
which was good.
It's like what we said initially, a lot of guys shy away from the Kawasaki side of things
Yeah.
because it takes that little bit more to
Extra,
go, cool,
yeah.
where are we?
Yeah.
And to do frame that's some serious structural frame modifications there.
Yeah, for sure.
That's some stuff that can go pretty south pretty quickly if it's not done correctly.
Before I saw the bike, and like when Matt had told me he'd done it all, and I was like, oh, I don't know how this is going to turn out.
Yep.
And then when he brought it, I was like, hang on, what have you done there? Like, have you actually even made...
It all looks
All
like
he
it
did looked like he welded some mounts on there, but
Yeah.
they actually made that whole lower section and, like I said, lifted it all up and cut and shut the exhaust. And
Yep.
so, they've definitely done a pretty neat job.
Yeah, and that's the biggest thing because it's the attention to detail that turns one bike from an average motorcycle into a really nice looking motorcycle. It's that little things, getting your weld fillets nice and even, and all your weld quality's great, and the way you think about how it's going together. But yeah, it's definitely turned out great. And like we were saying before, a lot with the Cerakote side of things and keeping it neutral, like my business partner Marshall, he's a pretty big advocate against burnt bronze, because everyone sort of just did it to death. We're a big fan of greys, and this is why we're a fan of greys, because it's neutral, but it still adds that element of a works factory look, and it's nice and clean and tidy, and it doesn't stand out too much.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, obviously, burnt bronze has its place on maybe some builds, but being like just with the era of the bike and like that look that we're going for, like you said, it definitely wanted to try and keep it neutral, and like I actually think like the neutral stands out pretty well in that respect.
Absolutely.
Especially with the nice hydro blasted cases. And
once you get those two, and I've always said it before, you look at different finishes when we're doing restorations, and as you know as well, it's like, it's not all one thing.
No.
It's what's your zinc plate color, what's your Cerakote color, what's your hydro, like
Absolutely.
what, you get those different tones end up highlighting each other and complementing each other.
Yeah, and that's why, like, I opted not to do like the brake lever or like the Kickstarter, because again, like you said, you can sort of go
over the top,
overboard, and all of a sudden it gets so dark and it's not going to make this stand out.
No.
Or like, the little bits and pieces that you've done throughout the bike.
Yeah, and look, even looking at the grip tape here, that matches that really nicely. And offsets it. It's everything sort of works together.
That's right.
And when you're going neutral, because these are the key elements from a design point of view. It's those 90s graphics. So you don't want to overshadow them with lots of other colours either. You want them to be the focal point of the motorcycle. And that really stands out with this one. And that's one of those things that sort of makes it look really cool and special.
Absolutely.
Rear shock, once again, you guys would have been in there.
Yep, so rear shocks, same thing with the fork, which is basically full strip down. Pretty lucky again with this model. They've got a pretty cool coloured shock body. So that's just a stock colour for the shock body. So yeah, full service, powder coated spring.
Yeah, that looks good. I just saw that. That's a really nice
and just again
chrome illusion blue. I think like a
revalved and sprung to suit what's going on in the front, and obviously
Did you have to put a lot of, like we said, we balanced the front for the engine conversion. Was it similar sort of thing with the rear? Or is that a different element? Is that sort of works more to what the chassis was originally?
Yeah. I sort of, again, obviously being a pretty unique thing, I sort of just did some math off like what the stock valve and stock spring rate is doing versus like what the rider's weight is versus what it's designed for as a stock point. And, I sort of not took a stab in the dark with it, but...
You've got to at some point though, you've got to go, we're going to make an educated guess as to where it's going to be.
Yeah, for sure. And we just sort of like backed off the valve in a bit and put a bit more of like an enduro style on it. And again, just sprung it and valved it knowing that it's not going to squat and drive like a 250F is. So, you sort of can get away with a little bit less like low speed damping and a little bit less spring force. But again, unfortunately, we haven't actually ridden it yet. So
that's why we're here now before it gets ridden.
Before it gets ridden. So, but yeah, it's actually going to be really interesting to see what it rides like. And
and we were having, having this conversation just before we started sort of getting into this. These things, sometimes they don't, as guys put them together, and like the 500s especially, like kudos to anyone who's doing it and any guys who want to ride it, but man, they vibrate
Oh,
something fierce.
Yeah.
Like they vibrated in a steel frame, let alone in an alloy frame.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things, we're talking about engine characteristics of a two-stroke, the way you set the front end up.
Yeah.
But you've also got, that sort of translates to the frame and all that sort of stuff. So it'll be interesting to know what it is like to ride. I know you've ridden it on a closed course quickly. To see
down
what it's like.
Closed road.
Yeah, down a private road.
It actually felt like obviously just riding down a smooth road. It's it feels really nice. It doesn't vibrate nowhere near as much as I thought it would.
Yep.
And I had the last of the KDM200 EXCs.
Okay.
And it actually, the engine feels very similar in the power delivery of what that felt like. And I love that bike, and that's where I was like, oh, this is actually could be
an interesting one.
Awesome. Yeah. The only thing I'm obviously what we got to sort of test when we do ride it is just seeing how the frame flexes.
Yep.
Because it's going to be good because we're going to put our rider Will Price on it, and
and he's a pretty competent dude on
bike,
so he's going to be able to push it.
He's the factory 250 rider for the Empire off-road team.
Yep.
So it'd be interesting to see what he says, what the frame and everything, suspension, all that stuff feels like compared to his 23 KX250X.
Even though they're still a few years apart, they're still fairly comparative from a feeling point of view, I think, from those bikes and what this would have been as a four-stroke, if that makes sense.
And you look at the frame, they've obviously made a few changes, but the concept's
it's still
very
similar.
similar.
It'll be probably the closest thing you could get to doing a back-to-back comparison without cutting up a 23 KX.
Yeah. So.
But that'll be really interesting.
Yeah.
Swing arm looks nice and clean and tidy. Hydroblasted again.
Yeah, hydroblasted, and then just some Prime MX love on those things.
Yep.
So,
they make a good product.
Yeah, and then obviously again clear stickers, just so that way we don't lose the hard work that we've put in the store.
The biggest thing we sort of struggle a lot with some of these stickers is guys that don't print white on stickers and stuff like that, and guys who just put the grey straight over. Like we do swing arm restorations, and we can sink 2 days into a swing arm.
Oh, absolutely.
And then just to stick a grey sticker over it, it's sort of kills you to die a little bit inside.
Yeah.
So it's nice to have that brushed look and that, and like I said with the zinc plating and all the different finishes, that's another key element to the way the bike looks.
For sure.
And all motorcycles, they have, that's another thing, you look at early 2000 CRs, they were neutral, they didn't have that, but that complements that motorcycle. So having that brushing and being able to see it really works well with the rest of it.
Yeah, definitely, and that's why I didn't just want to go slap a black, or grey sticker like you said. Yeah, it definitely sort of just keeps that nice clean look, and kind of just looks like the logos are printed on the swing arm. Yeah, essentially. So
100% it does. It looks really good.
I'm stoked with it.
Yeah. And then obviously rear brakes just rebuilt and Cerakoted.
Yep.
Nice and neutral again, which is really cool. That they sort of tie in really well.
Yeah, and luckily to find some new brake hose clips as well. That's all genuine stuff.
Okay. Because that sort of stuff, if you'd leave, they're the little 1% things that we always look at. You know what I mean? You look at some restorations, they haven't replaced that. And guys assume they can't get it, but even with some of the old bikes, you're like...
Funny story about that. I actually had the original ones Cerakoted, and then as soon as I put them on and flexed them a little bit, they all just started chipping. I'm No, I actually wonder if they got some new ones, and then of course they had them in stock because the bike's not that old.
No.
So just the little details like that, and but other than that, it's and again the original tailpiece as well.
Yep.
Just had to weld a different mount on the subframe.
Yep.
From memory, and that all worked pretty well as well.
Yeah, no, it looks amazing, and as like we've said a couple of times over now, compositionally from the whole bike as a unit just looks really clean. It looks really finished. It looks like a new bike. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It looks like it's a production motorcycle, and I think that's when you've hit that aesthetic and that goal when it does look. When we're doing car restorations years ago, you sort of look at that as well. You're like, does it look like the factory put it there? And that sort of was always my biggest
for sure.
thing. It's been done, modification has been done properly when it looks like it's a production thing.
And we're like that as well. And you sort of try and take as much pride as doing these sort of things as much as you can. And I was sort of asked Matt at the start, I'm like, what do you want to do? He just said, make it look new.
And that's sometimes it's hard. Sometimes you want tell me just tell me direction. Give me direction. But it's also nice to have a bit of poetic license when you're doing a lot of that stuff because you can have a bit more freedom to move. And if you've got a customer that's willing to put the resources into it, that makes all the difference as well. And someone who's been able to do the fab work. That's a rare thing. You know what I mean? Like we have our guy Steve Martin who does all our frame repairs for us. And we trust him explicitly. But when you've got a customer that's as knowledgeable, it really helps.
No, we're pretty lucky in that respect. He's we had to work a couple of things out, like the Kickstarter. We sort of it's a bit of a bit and still got to play around with it a little bit because it's hit the frame just a little bit at the end there, but.
There's compromise with all this. This stuff is a compromise.
Yeah, and it was good too because if I sort of was stuck with something, I could call Matt and be like, hey man, what do you reckon we should do here? Because I'm sort of like, we can do it this way, but I don't know if it's going to work. And because he's obviously got that sort of background where he fabs stuff. He can
you can
bounce ideas off him, and it was kind of cool because it's his bike too.
And that's a rare thing as well because 9 times out of 10, and it's no fault of the customer, but they're giving you that product to go, okay, well, they don't have that knowledge, so you're generally on your own. And I don't care how good you are, or whatever. We've all been in those situations where you're like, how am I going to get this to work?
Exactly. And they go, just do that then, it'll be fine. You're like, it's not that easy.
No, it's not.
Unfortunately.
It doesn't work that way.
So.
And as bike builders, we know, how hard it can be. So it is a rare thing to have a customer where you can go, hey man, we're thinking this, what do you reckon?
Yeah, for sure. And that's why at the moment it's sort of, like I said, taking a bit of a handbrake on the bike build stuff because I'm like you, if you're going to do it, you want to be able to put as much time and love into these jobs as you can.
And it's what you want to do and what you're geared up to do as well. That's what we do. So we're tooled for it, whereas you guys are doing stuff that we can't do.
That's
do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's that is a different zone. You've got to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Your workflow has to be tailored for doing restorations or custom stuff, or it has to be tailored for high-end suspension and race team sort of stuff because they're too There's not just dirt bikes, do you know what I mean? There's so many different subgenres.
And we sort of been doing it for a while, and obviously got caught up in the whole COVID lockdown bike build stage. And everyone was just dropping bikes off and build me these bikes. And I'm like,
cool.
I'm happy to do that.
Don't know if the world's going to end, let's do it.
There's no racing at the moment, so we've got heaps of time to do it. And this was sort of a victim of that. And I was sort of lucky Matt didn't really put too much crazy deadline on us.
He's pretty flexible with a lot of that sort of stuff.
He sort of went through some personal life stuff and couldn't really, sort of was restricted to ride. And
that happens a lot with these things as well. We see it a big time with what we do because we're all long-term projects. You get guys that say, hey, can you stop? We've got stuff, other
situations
stuff.
Change,
these don't take priority.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's a dirt bike. At the end of the day, it's not, life stuff. They generally do, little bits and pieces do come, but it's all part of the journey.
Yeah. And that's the thing, he's actually a good mate of mine as well. And, he's, like I said, he's gone through some stuff and it was actually cool to be able to do it for him, even though it took a little bit longer than anticipated. But it was cool to just see. He just said, "Here, man, we trusted what you're going to do and make it good." And
and it's definitely, like I said, it's these things are sort of a sum of their compromise, and you are working with compromises. Like you're saying with Kickstarter and stuff like this. And when you look at a bike like this, even from someone who's in the industry and you can't see those compromises, you're like, wow, that's done well. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you can see, I can see where that didn't work and someone's just patched it up. Whereas this doesn't have, even the Kickstart thing, I'm still looking at it. I can kind of see what you're talking about now, but to look at it, you won't see it immediately.
And it's not going to draw your attention.
No, and that sort of brings, like I said, it's just battling those compromises and how well you can
And that's funny,
them.
How many people walk in the shop and they're like, oh, there's a new Cowie there. No, hang on a minute.
There's
an expansion chamber hanging off that, so they're like...
You get someone young enough coming in, won't even know what that is.
That's I've actually had people ask me, is that new, that are not that switched on with bikes. They're like, is that a new bike? I'm like, no, it's actually, the motor's
cost about as much as it more than a new one.
Basically. So, no, it's actually been really fun and it's been cool to have it sitting at the shop for a while since it's been done because try and have it a little bit on display because people sort of appreciate it and get to have a look.
And you know, the hardest thing for us as well, as guys who do restorations and builds and stuff like this as well, sometimes you don't want to let them go because you're like, I don't know, like it's not quite how I want it, or like I want to keep going with it. And sometimes you just got to cut that cord and go off into the wild and let's get some time on it and come back with it. But
and I was like, I was just itching to ride it.
Yeah.
But you know, it's sort of like
it's perfect right now. It's
like,
isn't it?
Yeah, because like Matt's obviously wants us to do some edits on it and maybe get some footage of maybe wheel riding it or something like that. And I'm like, I just don't know if we could do it.
And like we had this conversation about fast guys and hard on gear. Do you know what I mean? It's sort of like I don't really want to stick a past 2.0.
Just don't grip the bike with any part.
Just forget you've got legs, all right? Just don't.
Do not grip.
Just suffer through the arm pump and deal with it. So KDM200, you actually rode not Hatter and Fink on one of those things. That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it was wild. Yeah,
it would have been.
Yeah, good fun, but. Because I don't know if I'd do it again.
You don't have the horsepower to pull yourself out of situations.
No.
Whereas some of the 450s, you sort of go, whoop, grip, whoop, off you go.
Yeah, it was heaps of fun when you timed everything good. You timed everything good, and you can get through a set of whoops with good timing and precision. But as soon as you made a mistake, it was very scary. Yeah. So, but. It was like all I had at the time, and I had the opportunity to do the race, and I always wanted to do it, so I just did it, man.
I've always I had played with that idea, if I ever get time, get an old two-stroke and just, not race it, but just do Fink, do you know what I mean? Like run the course and just to experience what it's like, because I reckon it'd be a really cool thing.
Yeah. If I ever did it again, I'd give me a 500. Just for shits, because I don't want to ride that track fast. It's scary.
Let's just do the nostalgic sort of thing and just something cool. And for a lot of, guys who aren't in the top however many 50 million guys that ride that race. It's more about the adventure than it is the race.
Oh, for sure.
You know what I mean? That's a big part of it.
And that's all it was for me. And to do it on a 200, and I was the only person to do it on a 200 that year. So
that's perfect.
It was pretty fun. And
I think 200 is a perfect size. Like for me as not a real racer, I've got a 150 Husky, and that's really nice. And I think I've always had this conversation with my dad. Modern 252 strokes, they're vicious. They're vicious bikes. The 200 sort of just that little bit extra, but that not too aggressive. And
it's to this day I regret selling it because it was just the sickest bike. I did full season of Vic off road on it. I raced Fink, I raced Hatter, I did some motocross stuff on it. It was awesome. I loved it, and it was sort
Could you trace it back to find it? Do you know where it is?
It went through a couple of mates, and then now it's gone. So it's probably have 5,000 hours on it. But
if I ever found since whenever.
But in saying that, I'd actually would love to find the last of the early 2000 KDX200.
Yep.
Because it was probably one of the very first bikes I actually rode.
Yeah. Okay.
Down on the lake bed of Lake Lemaggy.
Yeah. Nice.
And that was it was sick.
Dude.
Yeah, an absolute lounge share, and they awesome power delivery.
Yeah. I mean, look, you could probably do something, similar to this if you really wanted to. Obviously not to this spec because you put some hours on it. You just get it mechanically where it needed to be.
Yeah, and that's it. If I could ever find one.
I mean, these come up with hurt engines every now and again. That's sort of a bit of a thing.
Well, maybe if I'm lucky, one of the boys will grenade one of the race bikes, and I can just
cut that
take that rolling chassis. Thank you.
Yeah, I have that. We'll just put this in and off we go. All right, guys, that's it. We've gone through it. We really want to thank Stells for having us down at On Point to go through this KDX, and it's been great going through it with you. We've gone through from literally the front to the back. We've had a look at all the things that go into doing an AF conversion like this, because it's not just, like we said, it's not just a restoration. It takes a lot more, and we've been really happy and excited to come down. It's been planned for a little while now. We really thank you, and thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for sticking around, and hopefully we can bring you some more interesting behind the build episodes. We're sort of always looking for cool stuff to showcase, so if you do have anything that you think we might be interested in, just get onto our socials and let us know, and hopefully we can tee something up. All right, guys, my name's Kane. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon.
Nice.
All right. Dude, it's